My name is Linda Hayes, and I learned the truth about my family through a single mistake, an email sent to the wrong person. That night changed everything I believed about love, loyalty, and what family really means. I live alone in a glass house perched high above Portland, United States of America, overlooking the gray mist that rolls in from the hills. It's quiet here, too quiet sometimes. The kind of quiet that lets your thoughts breathe until they grow sharp enough to cut you. I built this house the same way I built everything else in my life, by myself. $7 million of glass, stone, and solitude. Every dollar was mine. Every inch of it earned, not gifted. It was a Tuesday evening in late autumn when the email arrived. The city below glowed like a scattered necklace of light. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, finishing reports for Hayes Innovations, the company I had founded 10 years earlier. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. My phone was face down beside my glass of wine, and I was scrolling through a long list of unread messages when one subject line caught my eye. Final plan for the company. It was from Richard Hayes, my father. I didn't think much of it. My father often sent messages about meetings or family dinners, sometimes even suggestions for improvements I never asked for. I clicked it open without hesitation. There were a few sentences at the top, and one line stood out so clearly that I felt the air leave my chest. You don't need to worry. Everything will be yours, my son. I read it again. Then again. My son. Not my children. Not my family. He meant my brother, Marcus. My father had never been careful with his words, but this was not carelessness. It was clarity. I scrolled down and found an attachment. The title alone made my pulse throb against my temples. Transition of Control, Hayes Innovations. I hesitated for half a second before clicking it. The document opened, and line by line, I watched my life unravel on the screen. The plan was long and thorough. Every page was a knife. Linda will accept a smaller role. We will offer her a generous salary to keep her satisfied. No shares. All executive control will pass to Marcus Hayes. They had thought of everything. There were even steps laid out for how they would convince me. My father, Richard, would urge me to step back for health reasons. My mother, Elaine, would talk about my stress and how I deserved a rest. My sister, Julia, would play the part of comforter, guiding me to accept the transition gracefully. And Marcus, my dear brother, would take over as CEO while pretending to be temporary. It was all there, clean, cold, and perfectly planned. I stared at the screen for a long time. My first thought wasn't anger, it was disbelief. I had built Hayes Innovations from the ground up. 10 years ago, in a cramped apartment in Denver, I'd lived on takeout noodles and coffee, coding all night, and sleeping on the couch. I started with just $4,800 and an old laptop. Every investor I convinced, every deal I closed, every idea that turned into profit, it all came from me. There were no gifts, no shortcuts. And now, my own family was planning to take it all, just because I wasn't the son. The deeper I read, the colder I felt. The last page held one final line, short and cruel. You don't need to worry. Everything will be yours, my son. That was when something inside me hardened. I sat there, staring at those words, and realized I had two choices. I could be the quiet, obedient daughter they thought I was, or I could become something else entirely. In that moment, I stopped being their daughter. I became their opponent. I closed the laptop carefully, as though the machine itself might explode from the heat of what I'd seen. I poured another glass of wine and walked to the tall window overlooking the city. Below me, Portland sparkled. Tiny streets full of strangers, none of whom knew that a woman on a hill had just found the truth about her own blood. I thought of all the years I'd spent trying to make my family proud. The birthdays I missed to attend meetings. The deals I flew across the country to close while my mother complained that I worked too much. The times my father called me ambitious, in that tone that meant selfish. Every memory folded into something new, something sharper. By midnight, I knew what I had to do. I wouldn't confront them right away. No, that would give them a chance to recover. Instead, I would plan, quietly, carefully, and with the same focus that had built a $400 million company from nothing. I would protect everything I owned, piece by piece, while they still believed they were in control. I forwarded the email and the attached document to my private legal archive, encrypting it in 3 layers. Then I sent a single message to my attorney, Victoria Reed, a woman from Cleveland with a mind like steel and no patience for weakness. I wrote only one line: "I need a meeting first thing tomorrow. Confidential." Her reply came 3 minutes later. "Understood. We move fast and we move quiet." After that, I sat in silence, listening to the hum of the house. The place felt different now. The marble floors, the glass walls, the art I had collected, it all felt temporary, like something built on sand. But I wasn't afraid. Beneath the shock and hurt, there was a strange kind of calm. They thought they could steal what I made, but they had forgotten who I was. I wasn't the girl who waited for permission. I was the woman who built an empire out of nothing, and I would defend it with everything I had. Around 2 in the morning, I walked through the house, barefoot on the cool floors. Every room reflected the life I had created: the sleek furniture, the awards on the wall, the photographs from company launches. There was one picture of my family, taken 5 years ago at our annual gala. I picked it up. My father stood in the middle, smiling too wide. My mother's hand rested on Marcus's arm. Julia and I stood at the edge, half cut out by the photographer's frame. I stared at that photo for a long time before setting it face down on the table. Outside, the night had deepened. The moon hung over the hills like a witness. I felt a quiet fire in my chest, not of rage, but of purpose. I knew that from this moment forward, everything would change. They had written their plan to take everything from me. Now, I would write mine, to take everything back. Before I went to bed, I opened the email one last time. I read the last line slowly, almost like a promise to myself. "You don't need to worry. Everything will be yours, my son." I whispered into the dark. "No, Father. It already is." Then I deleted the email from my inbox, knowing I had the evidence stored elsewhere, and closed my laptop. The soft click of it shutting was the sound of an ending and a beginning. As I climbed the stairs to my room, I felt no fear, only certainty. That was the night I stopped being a daughter. That was the night I became a force. That was the night my story truly began. After reading that email, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even curse, though 1,000 bitter words burned on my tongue. Instead, I sat there in the quiet of my kitchen, the refrigerator humming and the old clock on the wall ticking steadily as if nothing had changed. But something had changed. Everything had. That night, I promised myself that my family would never again have the power to hurt me or take what I'd built. I've always been the planner in the family, the one who thought 10 steps ahead while everyone else acted on impulse. My father liked to call me cold. He said I thought too much, that I didn't have a heart for family politics. He was right about one thing: I think before I act. So that night, while they were probably sleeping peacefully, I made a plan that would end them, quietly and completely. The first thing I did was forward the email and the attached document to my private legal folder, an encrypted vault that even my company's cybersecurity team didn't know existed. I made sure every copy of that message would live forever, somewhere only I could reach. Then I opened my contacts and found the one person I trusted with both my secrets and my survival: Victoria Reed, my attorney. Victoria and I had met years ago in Cleveland, United States of America, back when Hayes Innovations was barely a name on a business card. She was brilliant, methodical, and famously unshakable. Her voice could calm a fire. I sent her the email, the plan, and one simple message: "We need to secure everything. Now." Her reply came within 5 minutes. "We move fast and we move quiet." And we did. The next 2 weeks were a performance. I became the perfect daughter, the one my parents had always wanted me to be. I drove down to our family's brick house in Savannah, smiling through dinners I didn't want to attend and laughing at jokes that weren't funny. My father, Richard, poured wine and spoke about how the company is family property after all. My mother, Elaine, went on about trips she wanted to take to Europe, how it would be nice if I could slow down and trust Marcus more. My brother, Marcus, acted like he was already running the company, talking about strategic shifts and new leadership structures. And then there was Julia, my sister. Sweet, timid Julia. She watched me the way someone watches a storm forming, quietly afraid, pretending not to be. She asked if I was sleeping well, if I felt stressed, if I wanted to take some time off. She was part of the plan too, though she pretended innocence. Maybe she believed she was helping. Maybe she didn't. It didn't matter. Every smile I gave them was a mask. Every word I spoke was rehearsed. While they plotted my removal, I was writing theirs. Victoria and I worked late into the nights, filing legal documents and revising company bylaws. I transferred my shares into new structures that gave me permanent voting control. We amended the corporate constitution to make it impossible to remove the founder without a unanimous vote, which meant they would need my consent to take anything. I added new clauses to the employment agreements, quietly revoking all privileges and rights of family members who weren't actively contributing. Then I went further. I changed ownership on my properties, the glass house in Portland, my townhouse in Chicago, and even the beach place in Santa Barbara. Each one was retitled under my name only. No family trust, no co-signers, no sentimental loopholes. My name, my property, my power. During the day, I played my part. I took Marcus out for coffee, listening as he boasted about how much Dad values my ideas lately. He grinned as if he were already sitting in my office. I nodded, smiled, even said, "That's great, Marcus. You deserve it." Inside, I memorized every arrogant smirk, every careless phrase. In private, I kept building walls around my empire. Victoria called it Operation Firewall. She said, "You're locking every door before they realize they're outside." That phrase stuck with me. 2 weeks into the act, my father called. His tone was too sweet, too measured. "Linda," he began, "tomorrow we have the quarterly meeting at the main office in Charlotte, United States of America. We should talk about the future, your future. You've done so well, sweetheart. But it's time to think about scaling bigger, letting Marcus handle more of the day-to-day. You can rest a little." I stared out the window at the rain hitting the glass. "Of course, Dad," I said softly. "Let's talk about the future." When I hung up, I laughed, not loudly, but the kind of quiet laugh that comes when you realize your enemies think they're winning. The rain outside blurred the lights of the city, and for a moment I saw my reflection in the window. Calm, steady, dangerous. I thought of everything that had brought me to this point. The long nights, the failures, the tiny victories. I remembered the cheap apartment in Denver, the second-hand desk where I wrote the first lines of code that became my company's core product. No one helped me then. My father didn't believe in it. He told me I was playing with toys, while he invested money in Marcus's failed projects. My mother only ever said, "Don't work too hard, Linda. You'll regret it when you're older." Well, I had worked hard. I had built an empire out of air. And now they wanted to take it because I was a woman. Because I didn't fit their story of legacy and bloodline. That night, before the meeting, I went into my study and opened the email again. The words burned into my screen like scripture. "You don't need to worry. Everything will be yours, my son." It wasn't just greed. It was betrayal wrapped in tradition, cruelty disguised as love. And I realized that they would never stop unless I made them. So I decided I would. The plan was complete. Every contract rewritten, every loophole sealed. Even if they fought me in court, they would lose before the first hearing. Hayes Innovations was now legally untouchable. I had taken back not only my control but my peace. I closed my laptop, poured myself a drink, and sat on the couch beneath the tall windows. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city lights reflected in the wet glass like 100 tiny fires. I felt strangely calm, almost grateful for the betrayal that had woken me up. They thought they were playing chess, moving pieces, shifting control, waiting for me to make a mistake. But they didn't see that I wasn't playing their game anymore. I was taking the whole board. When I went to bed that night, I didn't dream of revenge or anger. I dreamed of freedom, the kind that comes only when you've cut yourself loose from those who would drag you down. Tomorrow would be the day they try to take my company. Tomorrow would also be the day I took back my life. As I turned off the light, I whispered to the dark, "You don't need to worry. Everything will be yours, my son." Then I smiled to myself, because by then I already knew they were the ones who needed to worry. The morning of the board meeting felt colder than usual. The air in Dallas, United States of America, carried that dry chill that makes you feel like the world is holding its breath. I remember standing by the window of my hotel suite, watching the skyline glow gold as the sun rose behind the tall buildings. I wasn't nervous. That surprised me. I expected my hands to shake, my pulse to race, but instead, I felt calm, like everything had already been decided. This was the day my family would try to take my company from me. And this was the day I would take everything back. When I arrived at Hayes Innovations headquarters, the marble lobby gleamed beneath bright lights. The receptionist smiled politely, unaware of the war that was about to unfold upstairs. I nodded to her, my heels clicking against the floor, and rode the elevator to the top floor. My reflection stared back at me in the mirrored walls. Dark suit, hair pinned neatly, eyes sharp and unreadable. The woman looking back wasn't the Linda who once begged for her family's approval. She was someone else now, someone unbreakable. The boardroom was exactly as I remembered. Long, rectangular, and framed with glass walls that looked out over the city. The dark wood tables stretched across the room like a battleground. My father, Richard Hayes, sat near the center, shoulders straight, face set in a false calm. My mother, Elaine, sat beside him in one of her pastel suits, clutching a folder. My brother, Marcus, leaned back in his chair with that same smug grin he'd worn since childhood. My sister, Julia, sat quietly beside him, her hands clasped in her lap, eyes darting between us. When I walked in, every head turned. The room fell silent. "Good morning," I said, my voice clear and even. I took my seat at the head of the table, the place that had always been mine. "Thank you all for coming. Today we'll be discussing leadership and the future direction of Hayes Innovations." My father smiled the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. "Actually, sweetheart, I'd like to begin." I raised a hand, stopping him. "Before you speak, there's something I need to share with everyone." He frowned. "Linda, this isn't. It won't take long," I said. The projector at the far end of the room hummed to life as I connected my laptop. Within seconds, the first slide appeared on the screen. The room dimmed slightly as the light from the projector filled the space. From Richard Hayes to Marcus Hayes, subject, final plan for the company. Then came the words that had burned themselves into my memory. "You don't need to worry. Everything will be yours, my son." For a moment, there was silence. My father went pale. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Marcus blinked, his grin vanishing. Julia whispered, "Oh God," under her breath. I let the document scroll down, showing paragraph after paragraph of their plan, how they would ease me out, how Marcus would take over as CEO, how I would be given a comfortable salary to keep me quiet. The words filled the room like poison. When it ended, I closed the file and turned to face them. "This," I said calmly, "is what my father sent to my brother 2 weeks ago. By mistake. I wasn't supposed to see it, but I did." My father's lips parted. "Linda, that was a draft, a misunderstanding." "No," I interrupted. "It was a betrayal. And not just of me, but of the company, the board, and every person who trusted me to lead honestly." I looked at the board members seated around us. They shifted in their chairs, their eyes flicking from me to my father. Some looked angry, others simply embarrassed to be caught in the middle. "My name is on the founding documents," I said. "I wrote the first code. I built the first product. I met every investor who believed in this company when it was nothing but an idea in a Denver apartment. Hayes Innovations exists because I refused to give up. And my family thought they could take it from me with an email and a few signatures." My father slammed his palm against the table. "Enough, Linda. You're overreacting. I was trying to protect you." "Protect me?" I said sharply. "From what?" From success? From owning what I earned? You weren't protecting me, father. You were protecting your son. His face flushed red. You're making a mistake. This isn't how we handle things as a family. You stopped being my family when you plotted against me. A quiet voice came from the back of the room. Actually, said Victoria Reed, my lawyer, standing smoothly from her seat near the wall, this is exactly how things will be handled. Legally and formally. She walked forward and placed a folder on the table. As of 8 o'clock this morning, new documents were filed with the corporate registry. Effective immediately, all executive powers rest solely with Ms. Linda Hayes. Any informal advisory roles held by Richard and Elaine Hayes are revoked. Marcus and Julia Hayes have no operational or voting rights within Hayes Innovations. My father's head snapped toward her. You can't do that. She already has, Victoria said calmly. I turned to him, my voice quiet but cold. Richard Hayes, you are no longer authorized to act in my name or the company's. You will leave this building today and never return. Elaine Hayes, your consulting contracts and benefits have been terminated. Marcus Hayes, your position as director is dissolved. Julia, you're relieved from all duties effective immediately. Marcus's jaw dropped. Linda, this is insane. You can't just throw us out. I met his eyes. You tried to throw me out first. I'm just better at it. Julia began to cry softly. Linda, I didn't want any of this. I swear I didn't. You could have warned me, I said. You didn't. 2 security officers entered the room quietly, as Victoria had arranged. They didn't touch anyone. They just stood near the door, waiting. My father looked around, searching for support, but none of the board members would meet his eyes. You'll regret this, he hissed. No, I said. You will. He stared at me for a long moment, and for the first time in my life, I saw something break behind his eyes. He stood, his chair scraping harshly against the floor, and walked out. My mother followed, crying quietly. Marcus cursed under his breath, glaring at me as he left. Julia lingered for a moment, her face pale, then turned away and went after them. The door shut softly behind them. Silence filled the room again, thick, electric, final. I sat down slowly, my hands steady on the table. Outside, the city shimmered in the afternoon light. I looked around at the board members, all waiting for me to speak. Let's begin, I said. And for the first time since that email, I felt something close to peace. That day, I didn't just protect my company. I ended an empire built on lies and replaced it with something real, mine. The woman who walked into that boardroom had been their daughter. The one who walked out was something else entirely. I walked to the window, looking out over Dallas, and smiled to myself. My reflection stared back, strong, unshaken, free. I whispered the words that had once hurt me most. You don't need to worry. Everything will be yours, my son. Then I smiled. No, father, I said softly. Everything will be mine. It has been 3 years since that day in the boardroom when I ended my family's control over my life. The world outside kept spinning, but mine became quiet, steady, and entirely my own. Hayes Innovations is now worth $600 million, with offices in Seattle and partnerships throughout Europe. The company runs smoother than ever. No family drama, no deceit, only results. Every success reminds me that I didn't just survive betrayal, I turned it into power. My glass house outside Portland still stands where it always did, but it feels different now. It's no longer a fortress against my family, it's a monument to my independence. I sometimes spend evenings sitting by the long window, watching the city lights blink far below. It's a view I bought with sweat, not inheritance. I earned every inch of this piece. I've bought a few other places too. A bright apartment in Miami, a penthouse in Chicago, and a lake house in Vermont where the mornings are wrapped in mist and silence. That house is my favorite. It's quiet enough to hear my own heartbeat and far enough from anyone who ever called me too ambitious. I live alone most of the time and I like it that way. My family story, on the other hand, is no longer a grand one. My father's investments collapsed soon after I cut him off. Without my company to support him, He drowned in bad loans and broken promises. The house in Savannah was sold, the car's gone. He and my mother now rent a small home in Columbus. I heard from an old colleague that my father sometimes borrows money from old business partners, men who once bowed to him. The humiliation must taste bitter. My mother tried to reach me once. She called the main office in Seattle, her voice trembling as she told my assistant, "Please tell Linda that her father made mistakes. But she's still our daughter." I never called back. When I needed her to stand up for me, she stayed quiet. Family silence is just another kind of betrayal. Marcus, my brother, the golden son, tried to reinvent himself. He gave interviews claiming he co-founded Hayes Innovations. For a few months, people believed him. Then a journalist published proof that he never owned a single share. The story ended his reputation overnight. He now scrambles for consulting work, pitching small ideas to people who don't remember his name. The world is less forgiving when it stops thinking you're important. Julia, my sister, was the only one I almost missed. She had always been gentle, the peacekeeper. But when she saw our parents plotting against me, she said nothing. Silence is easy when someone else is fighting your war. Now she works part-time at a cafe in Kansas City, still posting cheerful photos online as if pretending can fix regret. People sometimes ask if I feel guilty for what I did. The truth is no, I don't. They planned to take everything I built, to reduce me to a quiet figurehead while they lived off my work. They were ready to watch me disappear into the background of my own success. I only gave them what they wished for me, a small, quiet life. The difference is I chose mine. My closest friend, Daniel Cole, a designer from Boston, sometimes visits. He fills my kitchen with laughter and good wine. He says I should forgive them one day. I smile and tell him that forgiveness isn't part of my business plan. At night, when the world is still, I stand at my window and think of that first apartment in Denver, cheap furniture, cold nights, and endless coding sessions. That girl built everything I have now. She didn't know power, but she knew hunger. Sometimes, I whisper the words that started it all. "You don't need to worry. Everything will be yours, my son." And then I smile, because in the end, everything became mine, not by inheritance, not by accident, but by choice. I am the woman who read the wrong email at the right time, and I chose myself.